Hello, everyone. So, this is all about the eclipses in September and October for all of the signs. Lots of big moves happen during eclipses. This is not unusual. But if you're carried away with all of that and not looking at what's going on in your life, you're missing an opportunity. Eclipses are opportunities for change. And well, it's happening anyway. It doesn't mean that like it's not going to happen just because you're not looking at it. And in fact, a lot of the change that eclipses suggest happen because you're not looking at it, in fact, because they're eclipses, they're shadows. It reflects the shadow aspect of you. So, and that's also doesn't feel like you. This is why we call them shadow aspects. So it's like something that we push down deep and we push aside, or we think, for whatever reason, we do it, and then we just kind of disregard it. And that's why it has a bigger hold on us. This is the whole point of the eclipses, the lunar nodes, Rahu and Ketu. They have more of an impact on us. And in Indian astrology, they're actually seen as the most important, even more important than the planets. It's kind of like, in other words, the things that we're not conscious of have a bigger hold on us than the things we are conscious of. It's quite simple, really. We complicate it an awful lot, though, but it is, or it can be, quite simple. So let's look at the signs, sign by sign, and how these eclipses are impacting the signs. For Aries rising and or moon sign, so this eclipse starts in your 12th sign, the fourth lord of happiness, of home, being eclipsed by the sun, your fifth lord, which is very much about your creative expression and planning your future. Perhaps if you have children, around their future. But essentially, there's some obscuration here. There's some distortion, perhaps, and a sense of confusion even around these issues because of the moon now eclipsed in your 12th sign. But what it offers you also, Aries, is an ability to let go of something, some idea of something, so that you can see something for what it is and then plan the future and all the steps that you need to follow to see that through. Because in a couple of weeks after that eclipse on the 18th of September, you have the lunar eclipse on the 18th, and then 2 weeks later, you have the solar eclipse, the new moon, the dark moon, the moon itself eclipsing the sun. So in this case, the moon eclipsing the sun, eclipsing the resource, eclipsing the sense of clarity about moving forward with the South Node and Mercury all combined in your sixth sign shows you have to get clear about something, but more especially what you need to get rid of so that you can get to where you need to go and do what you need to do. The initial eclipse in your 12th sign, with that sun eclipsing your moon, your mind, the circumstances themselves may be obscuring things. But now, during the October 2nd eclipse, it's more the mind obscuring the actual circumstances. So try not to get too obscured here and instead use this time for what it's best for, and that is go within and get clear about what you need to do and maybe what you don't need to do. And again, maybe what you need to get rid of more than anything else. A South Node eclipse with the Sun, Moon, and Mercury in your sixth sign is showing you some plan, some idea, even some decision that you need to be clear about is as much about getting clear about what is not true any longer, what you don't need any longer. For Taurus, this is all about letting go of something you've been planning for some time. This has now come to a head now, as it has for all the signs, where the eclipse is bringing to the forefront the nodes in this axis, in your fifth and 11th house axis. Fifth and 11th house is very much about speculating about your future and ambitions that you have about what you want. It could be around home life as well, but it also could be anything you want to achieve. Rahu is said to do really well in your 11th sign, with Rahu and the moon in your 11th, and Jupiter, its ruler, in your first house. So there's definitely is some wanting to achieve some ambition here, but try not to obscure the mind in doing so. Because again, remember the first eclipse with the moon eclipsed on September 18th is circumstances eclipsing the mind. Fourth house indications eclipsing what you want. So the fourth house is very much about home. And so there could be something happening in your home life that is obscuring your mind, and you're not very clear about what it is that you want or what it is that you can get. A couple of weeks later, though, by the time we reach the solar eclipse on the 2nd of October, then it's the moon eclipsing the sun. So it's the mind eclipsing circumstances, and the mind wanting what it wants as your third lord. It might eclipse your situation, your home life situation, and also then have an impact on your plans for the future because it's now happening in your fifth house with Ketu and Mercury all combined with the sun and moon, asking you to get rid of some plans because maybe they're not working anymore. So again, as with any sign, try not to let these eclipses obscure these circumstances or your mind or both, so that you're not clear about what needs to be done, what decisions need to be made to achieve your higher ambition. Instead, use this time to go within, to get clear and allow things to settle out and see it for what it is, to be clear about what it is, and then make those decisions. For Gemini rising and or moon sign, these eclipses occur in your fourth and 10th house. So the first eclipse occurs in your 10th house. This is an eclipse of the moon, of the mind, of your second house, family, finances, things that you value being eclipsed by what you want. So it's important here by the sun's eclipse to your moon, even though a partial eclipse in your 10th house, that you don't take actions at this point that in any way obscure the reality of what your situation is either, because the moon can sometimes obscure that, of course, especially conjunct Rahu, the North Node, in your 10th house. So if it's in any way related to financial matters or family matters or work matters or whatever it might be, and that impacts your home and all of these things are impacted, try not to make decisions at this point until things are settled down. A couple of weeks after that eclipse moon, we have the sun, the circumstance itself eclipsed, distorted in a sense by the mind, by what you want, by the things that you say even. And oftentimes we don't think about how much we say has an impact on what happens. But what we say is important. And Gemini, I think you should know that more than any sign. So here we have the moon and Mercury and Ketu all conjoined in Virgo, and the moon eclipsing the sun, your third lord. So there's something here that you want to achieve. There's some ambition here. Maybe it's an enterprise, a new project you want, a new travel thing you want to, experience, whatever it might be. There's something here you want and that you think will make you happy. That's an eclipse in your fourth house. But because Ketu is eclipsing the sun here, it's about removing things that are not making you happy more than actually doing more and more things that you think will make you happy. Really, this eclipse, like for every sign, is about doing a clear out. So getting rid of the obstacles to your happiness in this case, getting you where you want to be. For Cancer, this eclipse, the axis is in your third and ninth house. So this is very much about your belief systems. And because the moon itself is what's eclipsed, your ruler is what's eclipsed initially, and then the moon, your ruler, eclipses the sun, which is the circumstance, there could be a lot of distortions here around what you think is the case and what you believe to be true. Third and ninth house is very much about opinions and beliefs. And the first eclipse in your ninth house with the moon here eclipsed by the sun, by your second lord, there could be some situation, some circumstance here, whether it's a family dynamic or a financial issue that's eclipsing your mind, that's distorting your mind, and you're possibly not very clear about the whole situation. So, and a lot of people obviously would consider this as finances being a big distorter of the mind because it makes us fearful. The moon is afraid of Rahu. And I think that's a thing to keep in mind at this point and to reconsider making any important decisions about anything financially at this time or in relation to family matters. A couple of weeks later, then, when the sun is eclipsed by your lord, the moon, i.e., the mind eclipsing circumstance, and your financial matters and family matters come to a head here. And with Ketu and Mercury here also, there's something that you have to let go of, something that has to be sacrificed for you to get what you want, whether it's financially or whatever it might be. So there's something to listen to here as well, though, because it's the third house. And Mercury's here as well, very powerful, ruler of your third and your 12th. So it's about asking yourself some important questions, going within and hearing that. It's an important thing to hear here. And if you spend the time listening to other people's opinions, this would be a waste of this eclipse. This third house getting so activated is about removing all of those opinions so that you can get clear about what is true for you. For Leo, this eclipse occurs in your second and eighth houses. So this is obviously to do with money more than anything, but also family dynamics and values. and values that are shared between yourself and your partner or any other, actually. And oftentimes when we think about the eighth house and eclipses in the eighth, we sometimes can think in more negative terms, but actually it doesn't have to be negative. The eighth house can just be anything unexpected. It could be positive. You could be with Rahu in the eighth, eclipsing this moon, the moon itself eclipsed by your ruler, the sun. It could show some distortion as well, for sure, but it also could show some unexpected, windfall. Eighth house isn't just about inheritance, by the way. It could be any kind of money that's coming to you that you haven't earned directly. And so maybe from your partner, maybe your partner's getting money. And so something that you could expect, like expect the unexpected here, I would say. And expect it to be good. Don't expect it to be negative. But do be open to what's not planned for, potentially here with this eclipse in your eighth. And then 2 weeks later, as everything's resolved and the new moon and this eclipse moon, or the sun itself, your ruler, the sun being eclipsed by the moon itself, by your 12th lord, this could certainly, distort things in your mind and in your actual circumstances. So keep things in perspective, I would say, at this time, Leo, and allow things to work themselves out, whether it's financially or within the family dynamics or both. It could be that you're dealing with some financial matters in your family, and you're maybe considering this in terms of your own ambitions in life and also implicating friendships as well. That's Mercury. So consider all of these things and try and take a pause in making any major decisions around these, and more so think about what needs to be let go of. Maybe it's just an idea of what something is than actual something, a tangible thing. But if it is a tangible thing, it will make itself known to you in due course. You don't have to rush this through. You don't have to feel impatient in making a decision about anything. This eclipse axis is so important for you, Virgo, because it is in your first and seventh house. And it's highlighting these nodes in your sign and your opposite sign for the last year. And it's bringing things to a head in a way. And it's a turning point for you, I think, Virgo, in a big way. And it highlights this need to let go of some idea that you have about yourself that is no longer true. And because the sun itself is your 12th lord and is being eclipsed in your sign by your moon, by your mind, by your ambitions, by friends circles, maybe by people trying to give you advice about something, try and let all of that slide and try and just go within and seek out the answers that you're finding more so within yourself at this time. The eclipses are hidden, they're shadow aspects. So I would say use this time, especially on the solar eclipse on the 2nd of October, to go within and get rid of the things that are no longer part of who you are anymore. It's all part of the past. The eclipse on the 18th of September is with Rahu, and moon eclipsed by Rahu, eclipsed by the sun, your 12th lord, certainly like show up some confusion around what it is you're doing long term, what are your ambitions here, and how, especially, it might confuse you in relationships. Like that could be friendships or romantic partner, where you're not really clear about how to go ahead anymore. But it could also at the same time show you a different way forward if you're open to it. Try not to be too pigeonholed about this. Try and keep an open mind, I would say, from the 18th. And like I said, then 2 weeks later, by the 2nd of October, then it's about just letting whatever notion you have in your mind go and allowing for something else to come in. For Libra, this eclipse occurs in your 6th and 12th houses. And so, just like with Aries, it's very much about day-to-day life and what you need to do versus what you need to let go of. But there's a huge emphasis on what you need to do here. Unlike for Aries, which is all about the letting go process and, letting go of all of the challenges that can come up, you're having to face into the challenges, Libra. Rahu's in your 6th house, so it's exaggerating, perhaps, distorting also, perhaps, in your mind's eye, what those challenges are and what you need to do, and especially around work challenges, because the moon is your 10th lord. So the sun here, your 11th lord, your ambitions in your work life could be obscuring what it is that's happening in your work and what you need to do, the steps you need to take. So this is a time, especially around work and working with people, to be patient around what's happening. 2 weeks later, then, when we have that eclipse in your 12th house, with the Lord of the 12th house, with the Sun, your 11th Lord, and the Moon, the 10th Lord, obviously this is a lot to do with ambitions and work ambitions, especially that need to be ended in one way or changed in some way. Like maybe it's just your perceptions need to be changed. Maybe your idea of what needs to happen needs to change. Maybe not the thing itself. But because it's an eclipse in your 12th with Ketu, it's asking you to let go of something. Something needs to be sacrificed. Again, it could be just the idea of something being a certain way when it's not actually that way. Keep an open mind throughout, I would say. Then for Scorpio, this is in your 5th and 11th house axis, just like for Taurus. But in this case, there's such an emphasis on what you want that you might reject and certainly at least neglect what others need. Maybe it's a friend circle, maybe it's some sort of social setting, maybe it's some bigger ambition you yourself are denying yourself because you are just enjoying yourself doing something else. Nothing wrong with that, but just consider getting a balance right here, as all the signs must with the nodes. Rahu eclipsing the moon, your 9th lord, about beliefs. The sun itself, your 10th lord, about what you need to do, distorting the mind because of these enjoyments. 5th house is enjoyable, yes, but Rahu distorts even that. And therefore then distorts the mind and being able to make clear decisions. The 5th house is also about just being very clear about what decisions you need to make. And Rahu eclipsing the moon isn't clear. And especially if it's around children, but any kind of future planning around this time, I would keep an open mind about it. And then 2 weeks later, on the 2nd of October, that eclipse in your 11th sign with the 11th Lord, with your 10th Lord, and again, the 10th, the sun being eclipsed by the moon, by the mind. Just keep things in perspective here, because there's obviously something that you need to relinquish. There's something ending in your career, but it could be just the way you're doing things. It doesn't have to be an ending of a job necessarily, although maybe some Scorpios will be ending some aspect of their job. Certainly keep an open mind about it and try not to rush through any kind of decisions around this, because it's not 100% clear as yet. The dust has to settle after this period. For Sagittarius, this is eclipses in your 4th and 10th house, just like with Gemini, but the focus is a lot more on home life than work life. It doesn't mean that you should neglect your work life, though, because if you do any swinging wildly from one to the other, you're going to experience the snapback and the attention being drawn back into the other. So if you're neglecting your home life because you're like focusing on work because you want to do something that really is important to you, then think about why you're doing anything, right? 4th house isn't just about home, it's about happiness. And so Rahu's transit through your 4th house now really exaggerating the mind here, distorting the mind here, potentially, with the 8th Lord moon distorted by Rahu and the sun itself, your 9th Lord, your beliefs about what is possible at this time in terms of how can you be happy. Like there could be a lot of distortion around these things right now that you need to keep an open mind about. And then 2 weeks later, on the 2nd of October, that eclipse of the sun itself, your 9th lord, by the moon, your 8th lord, could just completely distort things. Like you're maybe even catastrophizing about things in relation to work now as well. And at the same time, there is something that has to be let go of here. And it might be just, again, not necessarily a work thing, but a belief about a work thing or a belief about how you're doing things and how things can be done. So for Sagittarius, I would say just be open-minded about how things can be done right now. So for Capricorn, this is an eclipse set in your 3rd and 9th house, as it is for Cancer. But in this case, it's very much focusing on opinions and getting rid of beliefs, outworn beliefs leading up to that October eclipse. On the 18th of September, the moon itself, your 7th lord of relationships, is eclipsed by Rahu, and it is obscured by the sun, your 8th lord. So there's some dynamics that have to be worked out here in relationships, and communication could be in some way exaggerated or distorted, and there could be something that's said or you don't hear what's said, and you're unclear about what is true. And at the same time, you can keep an open mind about what could be. There could be so many things that could be true that you can't see right now, so keep an open mind. 2 weeks later, on the 2nd of October, this is a time to be especially open-minded about what is true, because it's an eclipse in your 9th house with Ketu and the Lord Mercury. And here again now, the sun itself being eclipsed by the moon, by the mind, circumstances being eclipsed by perceptions of what is, and involving relationships of some kind. So there's some lack of clarity here around what is true. And yet at the same time, it could offer you deep insights into what is true in your 9th house. and to get rid of anything that is not true at this point. So this could be an important time for you letting go of some long, like deeply held belief systems that are no longer serving you or anyone. For Aquarius, this is the eclipse set in your second and eighth signs. And just like with Leo, it's about money and family, but the focus is a lot on your own wealth and money and storing money perhaps, and maybe through fear as well, wanting to kind of store it all up. But there is an obscuration here. Remember, it's an eclipse moon. So the sixth lord, the moon, there's some steps maybe that you're not seeing. Maybe there's some issue around relationships that are obscuring your ability to see the steps you need to take to get to where you want to go, to accumulate that wealth that you want, or to accumulate that safety that you so need right now. And then 2 weeks later, on the October 2nd eclipse, this is in your eighth sign, where it does again offer up some surprises potentially. But again, think about that as maybe more positive. It could be some positive news that's unexpected. But again, there's some obscuration, there's some distortion going on while you're also being asked to get rid of something. And it might be to do with some work related thing as well for you, Aquarius, but there certainly could be some distortion in your mind about what needs to be done and how you need to engage with this thing and engage with others in general as well with this eclipse sun. But it's such a powerful time in so many other ways that, it's an important time to go within and to be clear about these things before you make any rash decisions. Get clear about it first, I would say. And then finally for Pisces. So for Pisces, this is so important, just as it is for Virgo. It's in your first and seventh signs. So the eclipse starts out in your sign on the 18th of September, a lunar eclipse. The moon, the mind, the fifth lord, especially representing the mind and your thinking processes and your ability to decide clearly, is eclipsed by Rahu, the 12th lord. So there's some obviously lack of clarity here. And it's a lack of clarity because maybe potentially of you not being clear about what you're meant to be doing or who you are even. Rahu in the first house can show this kind of distortion about who you are and maybe playing lots of different roles and so on. And then, eventually you get clear. But as you become clear about who you are and who you're not, more so potentially, your relationships change. And the eclipse on the 2nd of October, then with Ketu and the sun being eclipsed there with the moon, the mind, again, decisions not being very clear perhaps about what you need to do with somebody else, especially, and it's or what you're doing and its impact on that other person, on your relationships. Your relationships are obviously a key factor here as you're going through these big changes, maybe more obvious external changes even, while your partner is going through their own changes, maybe more internal, that you might not even see this happening, but it's happening or you sense it happening. And this eclipse is likely to bring it out into the open for you to both talk about it and see it for what it is. Now, it could also be if you're not in a relationship, it just generally that the world out there is changing so much and you yourself are personally changing, that there's so much in flux right now, I would say, Pisces, that it's just worth taking a step back from all of this and allow the dust to settle on all of these changes before you move forward, making any decisions about your relationships or any area of your life really into the latter part of October. So, folks, I hope that's been of help. That was a whiz around all of the signs and how it may impact each of the signs. It's a very general forecast, of course. It really depends on what's going on in your chart. Besides, what planets have you got in Virgo and Pisces, if any? What dasha or time period you're in, because that's going to have a bigger say in how you're impacted by these. If you're in a dasha of Rahu or Ketu or any of the planets involved, as in if you have planets in Virgo or Pisces and you're in the dasha of those planets that are being, in a sense, eclipsed by these eclipses in September, October, this is going to be so powerful for you. But in some way, in a way for everybody, we're all going through this change together. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions about any of that, please feel free to post below. Please ask the questions because other people will benefit also from that. Please like this video also and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to this channel. Check out timelineastrology.com. I do a lot more of these kinds of videos, sign-based videos, and a whole lot more besides. Wishing you all the best, folks, and until next time.